Seth Denson. Seth Denson is a consultant and strategist with GDP Advisors. He's an expert in this area. He joins us on Metro News Talkline. Seth, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. We don't have 2 hours here. Take a few minutes. So why is it the way I just described it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I think there's a direct and an indirect influence in why the cost of drugs here in the U.S. is so expensive. And just to say it quickly, the U.S. pays for the research and development for the rest of the world when it comes to modern medicine advancement in prescription drugs specifically. And so because of our free market capitalistic society, which I'm a free market capitalist, I'm a fan of the system we have, when it comes to healthcare, private industry is doing most of the research and development.
Right.
And it needs to get the return on that investment. And the best place to do it is here in the good old U.S. of A. And so what happens is it takes roughly $2.6 billion on average to bring a new drug to market by the time it goes through FDA testing and all of that. And that's about a 12-year process. So there's few companies that can make that type of investment. And if they do, they want to get that money back. So the United States consumer is oftentimes paying for the bottom line return on investment for the manufacturer, while the rest of the world is freeloading, so to speak, because of their government price controls. The manufacturer has to set a price at a certain point in foreign markets. So the foreign markets are paying for top-line growth while the U.S. consumer is paying for bottom-line growth.
So, Seth, I get the amount of money and time it takes to get a drug to market. I get that the pharmaceutical companies want an ROI. But then why wouldn't other countries you say they have price controls, but shouldn't they be paying their fair share of the research as well? And how could we do that?
Well, that's when you get into more of a government policy and state discussions, right? We got a new Secretary of State brought into the equation yesterday. Maybe this is something they'll take up. I mean, this is absolutely a state-based issue from United States and how we interact with foreign governments and our trade structures. And so this is a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge that we have. We want the medical advancement that comes with research and development. We want those drugs. But it would be nice if the rest of the world would help chip in on this. Now, the rest of the world does do some of their own research. Unfortunately, the FDA here in the United States is very restrictive on allowing that research in. So I think that from a regulatory basis, the federal government could loosen some of its restrictions on how foreign research and development can get into the United States and help drive costs down and bring more companies into the equation to try to be advancing modern medicine as well to drive costs down from a competition perspective.
Health industry expert Seth Denson's with us talking about prescription drug prices. Do pharmaceutical companies use popular drugs that everybody wants and maybe insurance covers to cover the cost of less profitable drugs? I mean, is there cost shifting that goes on?
Well, listen, I think the simple answer is likely yes. I mean, obviously, I don't know all the inner workings of the various manufacturers on drugs that they try to develop that maybe never made it or those that are underperforming. It all goes into the bottom line structure. So basic economic principles of business apply here. The challenge here, though, and this is the indirect impact, is, and listen, I just kind of made a case for why pharmaceuticals charge what they want to charge, but I think that let's not make these folks Boy Scouts, right?
Yeah.
They're about driving the dollar, and one of the things that we're seeing now that to me is almost a challenging thing to look at is manufacturers are now going back to to say it differently, they're going back to the well and looking at old drugs that have maybe now gone on the generic list or even over the counter. And what they're doing is they're combining certain drugs that are already gone through testing. They're applying for a patent and then reselling it to the market. A great example is a drug called Vimovo, which in reality is just Nexium and I think it's Aleve, which are two over-the-counter drugs. They combine, put a gel cap around it. Instead of it costing the consumer $20, we now charge $2,000 for the drug. And so these are the little tricks that are being played, and I think the indirect impact is that we as the consumer need to do a better job of being a consumer.
Well, let me ask you about, okay, let's go there, Seth, because how much of what is going on is driven by, and I'm a capitalist too, is driven by, though, we're sitting there, we see a commercial, there's a happy couple walking along the beach, and that's because he's taking, Exitor, or she's taking Wizador, and we go to the doctor and say, if I had some of that Wizador, I'd probably have a better life. I mean, how much is that driving it?
It's absolutely making an impact. If it didn't make an impact, they wouldn't pay them millions of dollars for that advertising, right? And so one of the challenges is, and this is what I tell people too, is always talk to your doctor, but also recognize that sometimes the pharmaceutical industry spends millions of dollars every year to make sure your doctor thinks that their drug is the only solution.
And they're coming there and they're pitching these drugs every day to the doctors. They're coming every day I'm not bashing doctors, but they're coming to the doctor's office every day pitching these drugs.
That's right, and doctors have limited time, and they're trying to see patients, and they're going to listen to the information that's given to them and proceed. And if I said, hey, listen, I got a drug that's going to help with acid reflux, here you go, and your patient takes the sample and comes back in 30 days and says, you're right, I haven't had acid reflux. Well, you shouldn't have. You've been taking Nexium for the last 30 days.
Yeah. So what can the average person do? This health thing is so overwhelming. The average person and we're on probably too many prescriptions anyway compared to the rest of the world, what can we do?
Yeah, a couple things really, and I'll tell you the main thing is obviously if there's a generic option, take it. But there are resources out there that will help you be a better consumer. One of those is a consumer website called GoodRx, GOODRX.com. There's an Apple and an Android app. You can download that. You can have it with you in your doctor's office if they say you need to take this drug. The great thing about this, you can plug the information of the drug that you're being prescribed in, and it will immediately feed you responses on what alternatives there are to that drug, but also where you can go buy that drug at the lowest cost from a pharmacy nearby.
Oh, really?
So pharmacy shopping is good. Different pharmacies have different prices on drugs, so shop that. Use resources like that. Ask good questions, and always engage with your doctor.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. All right, Seth Denson, health industry expert. Seth is a consultant and strategist with GDP Advisors. I bet you're on Nexium too. I'm not going to ask you to reveal that, but everybody's on. All right, man.
Good. A little HIPAA here, my friend.
I feel you. All right, good talking to you. Take care.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.